That had a little fellow named Crash Bandicoot,
Yes,
who was
I love Crash so much. That game is to me that game is a severely, in the grand scheme of things, underrated mascot platformer. I think over the years people have kind of discounted it and kind of looked down on it, but especially Crash 2, both visually and mechanically. I mean, it was definitely slower and a little bit more clumsy and ungainly than say Mario was. But I feel like as far as like an introduction to 3D platforming, so like Mario 64 did 3D platforming, but I never felt like I really knew where I was jumping or where I was going in Mario 64.
Let's back up for a second. We're talking about Mario and in a PlayStation conversation. Probably my favorite piece of information here is that PlayStation began as a Nintendo product.
Absolutely. Like so, you know, Sony and Nintendo were working together, were collaborating on making a new system, and at the end of the day, they couldn't get on the same page about what the primary medium should be. And Nintendo was very married to the idea of staying with a cartridge because of the lack of load times there, because you know a CD-ROM was going to mean loading times between levels, and you know they wanted the experience to be quick and speedy, and they didn't want people to have to wait. And Sony was like, yeah, but there's all these limitations when you're working with a cartridge, and there's high costs involved as well. CD is cheaper and gives you more possibilities. Philosophically, they couldn't marry those two ideas together, and so they parted ways. And Sony just took what they had worked on and just kept running with it.
I'd like to piggyback on what you said about the CDs there. That's part of what makes the PlayStation generation so great. That media was so cheap to develop for and produce.
And Sony helped invent it. That was the CD-ROM was kind of invented by, was it Philips and Sony, wasn't it?
Yeah, Philips and Sony, and I don't know the deep history of this, but it was a collaborative effort across several hardware manufacturers. But yeah, it was easy to make the medium. And the PlayStation was deliberately easy to develop for relative to other consoles that had come before. So it was really easy to fool around with the thing and just try stuff. And that led to this immense variety of software. And it created a market situation where people who couldn't have afforded maybe to develop games of a certain kind before could suddenly sell them in small runs and still make a profit. And it created a very fertile marketplace. The price of video games actually kind of went down for a while.
So low at that time.
Also, a big part of that was the fact that Sony had experience selling CDs, which were a new medium for, or a new format for music. They were good at kind of approaching artists. They had the whole Sony Music, and that actually was kind of repurposed to be Sony Computer Entertainment. Like they had people who were able to go and talk to artist type people versus just talking to business software, or treating it like Sony up until that point they were a consumer electronics company, not a software company.
And they kind of followed that through with the industrial design for the PlayStation. You can see the shades of the Famicom, the Japanese Nintendo there.
Absolutely, you can.
But the final design looks more like something that should be next to your television on your 1995 shelf, below your hi-fi VCR or whatever you have.
It was a CD player. It had RCA out. It had really, and you could do cool visualizations on there. And that was a time when not everyone had CD players already. So,
and this is the beginning, and you're absolutely right. Not everyone has a CD player, and this is kind of the beginning, in a lot of ways, of what will become not just a video game console war. It will become a war for the living room, and it starts here with the PlayStation being not just a device that plays games, but a device that plays other forms of media.